Come join us as we go behind the scenes of today's most notorious cybercrime, translating cybersecurity into everyday language that's practical and easy to understand. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast by downloading our episodes on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cyber Crime Junkies, and now the show. Well, welcome everybody to Cyber Crime Junkies. I am your host, David Mauro, and in the studio today, we're going to talk about GRC, governance, risk, compliance within the cybersecurity space. I'm very excited to have Arik Solomon on the podcast today. He's a consummate expert, founder of a company that focuses on GRC, and has a phenomenal history with the Israeli cyber intelligence, as well as formerly being CTO of Ernst & Young's Cybersecurity Center. And he founded and is CEO of Cypago. Arik, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here today with you.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in hearing your origin story. Walk us through, how did you, when you were a kid, I assume you didn't plan to be the head of a GRC SaaS program because they weren't around then. So walk us through what drove you to get into cybersecurity in the first place?
Yeah, well, it all started when I was 10 months old. No, just kidding. Today, I'm the CEO and co-founder at Cypago. But my journey into the cybersecurity world and later into the cyber GRC world started as probably many other Israeli entrepreneurs with the Israeli intelligence, where I spent some years with the famous 8200 unit, and later some 10 years with Israeli intelligence as a department leader, when I built and led a large group of researchers and developers and other type of professionals in doing a lot of interesting stuff around cyber, some offensive cyber. But eventually, that's super exciting. But this, in one sense, this is not real life. You're playing like G.I. Joe, which is great. Cyber G.I. Joe. It's funny that nobody has came up with these kind of action figures yet. Maybe it's
you just heard it here on Cyber Crime Junkies, and I'm about to trademark that because that sounds like a great action figure, doesn't it?
Yeah, with a keyboard attached.
Right, with a keyboard, he's able to fly drones. You could just see all the accessories.
Exactly. So anyway, when I went back to the industry, my first important and mind-opening role was as CTO for E&Y, Ernst & Young, their cybersecurity center. Back then, I was based in Tel Aviv, but my main focus was the North American market, mainly the US, working with large enterprises, coming in with a suit and tie as a consultant, as an advisory board, working with CISOs and helping them go through their security assessments. And I think that this was the first time that I really encountered the challenge. I really faced the challenge, the real life challenge. Think about super large enterprises with tens of, even hundreds of thousands of endpoints, large complex networks. And when I was asking simple questions such as the CISO, how well are you familiar, or how well do you know that your cybersecurity program is aligned with the business requirements, whatever the business needs you to have in place, not just shiny, cool tools that you have in your security
from the technical perspective, right? Is it aligned with the business growth initiatives? Is it aligned with their cost-cutting measures over in this department, their expansion in the other department, all of those initiatives, right?
Exactly. And even more so, is it aligned with the enterprise risk approach, the risk appetite, as everybody the same notion as everybody else are using? But I think about the aggregate amount of requirements that a business needs to live up to, the regulator, the industry in general, the customers, internal company policies. There are so many inputs Now, these inputs eventually all translate into, because we are all digital businesses today, even the nuclear energy power plants are based on computers. So the CISO, the one that leads the information security, has a lot on their mind, and in order to make sure that their security programs are functioning the way that the business needs them to function. So I believe that this is where the idea around cyber GRC really started, because GRC has been around for ages now, right? Governance, risk, and compliance. That's a well-known and well-familiar concept. But taking that and implementing that, the projection of cyber GRC or the GRC on the cyber domain, on the security program, this is something relatively new. We, as a company, have seen that in the last couple of years as an emerging need that is specifically evident and acute with the large enterprises out there.
So let me break that down. That was really helpful. So, and it's interesting that you spotted that void, right? Or that disconnect in organizations that you were seeing. First, I want to ask you, based on your experience, do some of the CISOs, not naming names, because I know a million of them, so do you, right? But some of the CISOs, do some of them struggle with the sophistication of simplicity, with boiling down the technical features and benefits and the data into business terms, into like, this is where it fits? I mean, is that part of why you saw that need? I'm just curious.
Yeah. First, let me share my sentiment, my deepest sentiment with all the CISOs and other security leaders out there. Becoming a CISO these days, you need to have like a unique approach to life in general and business in specific. This is super challenging these days. There are so many things, so many moving pieces.
High. Yeah, the burnout rate is very high. They don't last long generally. Some of them have been there for decades, but some are just, it's tough. It's really, really hard.
Exactly. So this is why I believe that our responsibility as vendors is to help security leaders as much as we can. And I believe that help should come in the shape and form of along the lines that you've just mentioned, to make things simple, actionable, that you can tie the loose ends. Because again, you may have 30, 50, or 100 different types of security solutions in your stack, but someone needs to put some order into the chaos. And we at Cypago are trying to do our share, to contribute our share in making this, building this order.
Yep. So for listeners that might not, we have a whole group, our audience is varied, but for say the small, mid-sized businesses that don't have a CISO themselves, they might engage an IT company, MSSP. For a lot of them don't have GRC formalized. It's formalized. They have governance. They have policies in place. Their MSSP is helping them, etc. But walk us through just simple terms. What is GRC? What is governance? What is risk and compliance within the business space? Because some organizations have actual departments. They have like GRC departments, or it's aligned. Some of them, are aligned with insider risk groups, and in some organizations, those fall under cybersecurity. Sometimes those fall under HR. I've seen it every way. Like there's a lot of different models out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that in many ways, it's similar to cybersecurity in general, right? I mean, the minute you open your new Gmail account, you're now a potential victim. Someone will attack you somehow. You'll get a spam or even something worse. The same core threat exists with Walmart as well, right? With 1 million employees. In essence, this is the same. So GRC or cyber GRC works exactly in the same way. If you're a small or medium business, your overall risk exposure is smaller, is more manageable maybe. Your compliance needs are limited because, I don't know, maybe you're not even directly regulated. So it's just something like a standard, a security standard that you need to adhere to, like ISO 27001 or SOC 2 or something similar.
NIST 800.
Exactly. But it's essentially the processes that you need to go through are exactly the same as the monstrous, large, super large company. So you need to be, first, the most important aspect from the management perspective is awareness. You need to know. We now, 2025, we live in a world that we don't have the privilege to look at the other side. There is risk. There are compliance needs. There is a need to implement some governance methods, processes. You have to do something in this area. Now, if you're small enough, you can outsource that. You can use MSSPs, as you mentioned, and some other measures, or you can use one of the relatively long list of software out there that helps you go through that.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine setting yourself apart from the competition because your organization is always secure, always available, and always ahead of the curve. That's NetGain Technologies, your total one source for cybersecurity, IT support, and technology planning. Picture picking up the phone and having decades of technology and cybersecurity expertise on the other end, like a bat phone, but with a team of specialists ready to make your business faster, easier, and more profitable. Contact NetGain today at 844-777-6278 or reach out online at netgainit.com. That's netgainit.com and get ahead of your competition today. Right. But regardless, the small to mid-sized business entity, they have a lot of risk because a lot of times they don't have a lot of the standard protocols in place. A lot of them don't have even EDR in place and like all these basic fundamental things that enterprise organizations all have. Their risk is bigger because there's such a wide footprint and they've got to cover all the bases. But some of the smaller organizations, they fly blind. They don't, they're not prepared for a breach. They just don't have those policies in place. They haven't addressed a lot of this, and that's so important. So understanding the role of governance, risk, compliance from a formal setting in that an enterprise environment, the small and mid-sized business can see what good looks like, and as they grow, that's what they need to mature into.
Absolutely. What makes it even more complex and challenging is that, like in nature, that big fish eats the smaller fish. In business, we hope that nobody eats no one else, but the big fish out there, they use the smaller fish, the supply chain methodology, right? So I can be, again, Walmart, but eventually down the links, if I follow them through the chain, I will find probably thousands or tens of thousands of small businesses that all contribute to my business as the giant company. Now, Absolutely. If I have a risk, this risk will trickle and will propagate, and it eventually will materialize itself with the large fish out there. So when we talk with these large enterprises, this is something that we put an emphasis on, that when you go out and you go about and calculate your risk and you are walking through or your security controls, you need to make sure that you're collecting all the data from all across as much as possible, make it 360, like you want to be omnipresent and as continuous as you can.
Yep, absolutely. So what are some of the, I guess, real world examples when an organization would see governance, risk, and compliance in place? The compliance piece, I think, is pretty self-evident, right? They have a standard they have to comply with. Each control there. I mean, here in the US, we have CMMC. Even CMMC level 1, the very basic one that does apply to a lot of small businesses. Even that one has 17 controls now. Like a lot of organizations are like, we had no idea we had to do that, right? Like they don't even realize it. But they're pretty clear, and you just have to put these initiatives in place and get them done. But the governance piece and the risk piece, I get a lot of questions on that. Can you walk us through, like, what's an example of, we have governance in place, we have, we've looked at our risk. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, with pleasure. So again, my kind of backyard are the larger enterprises and the processes that they implement. But again, the challenge is the same. You can do that and measure that in different scales. I think that the simplest way to put it is to, again, think about an organization that has multiple business units. Okay. This can be 2 or 3 or 200. And each of these business units, maybe you have different product lines that you sell into different industries, or you have different geographies. In that case, you automatically have like a multidimensional metrics with different types of requirements, compliance, regulation, other market demands. And now from the information security standpoint, from the cyber risk management standpoint, you now have multiple entities that you need to manage. So that I would say is the first component of when you think about governance. Governance starts with knowing. Again, we're not in a position where we can look away. We have to know, and we have to get that ongoing continuous visibility into what we currently have. That's the first most basic step. I think the second important element to that is the ability to implement, to define, and then implement policies. Now, every company has them, right? And in, 90% of the cases, these are documents lying over in some, forgotten folder somewhere in the cloud or who knows where, and nobody really cares about them. So this is the second component of governance, being able, and again, looking at the world through the cybersecurity lenses, taking these policies and making sure that they are properly implemented in real life. Employees and the company in general, the processes, the IT, the apps, whatever you're using, the data is in compliance with your own internal policies. Why? Because the board or the risk committee or some other entity within the company has decided that this is the way that we want to operate. And now this is the way that we're going to implement it. Now, there are some tools or methodologies that you can use. One of them was introduced early last year in February or March 2024. It's the known NIST CSF framework. Back like 12 months ago, the 2.0 version was introduced with an added layer of what that was called govern. So that was an additional set of requirements or guidelines, more to speak, that helps organizations kind of break that sometimes vague definition of governance into concrete, real steps that they need to take.
That's excellent. So when we think of the benefits to having that visibility, your platform is a SaaS platform, easy to install. It puts it all on a pane of glass. And while not talking about the product specifically, just having that visibility and having that awareness seems so important. Can you walk us through kind of what the benefits are for a business to kind of leverage it all in a single pane of glass? I can assume what they are, but I would like to hear it from.
Yeah, I believe that it starts and ends with risk management. In order to decide if you're currently experiencing a risk that is below or above your risk up the company, the organization.
Risk management. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point. And I apologize for interrupting you. I didn't mean to be rude. But every organization kind of identifies what their risk appetite is. Like we're in heavy growth mode, high risk. But now that we've captured good market share, we want to really make them more profitable, keep the retention of those clients, lower the risk, and really get better at our controls. And it ebbs and flows for a lot of organizations. So understanding what that risk appetite is and then aligning your GRC program to that. Is that what you're saying? Makes sense.
Exactly. Now, business risk immediately translates into information security risk or cyber risk.
Yeah.
And now the only way to monitor, measure, and calculate the risk is having that visibility. You need to know what's going on, what's happening. Again, going back to the policies or regulations or other compliance regimes that you need to adhere to, eventually, at the end of the day, it translates into a list of controls, hundreds, sometimes thousands of controls that you need to implement. And you need to track and monitor and make sure that they are still in place. Now, since organizations are dynamic creatures, many things happen on a daily basis. People come and go. New apps are being introduced. Someone changes configuration. Someone does something by mistake, whatever. You can't now do something on January 2nd and assume that this will last till next Christmas. This will not happen. You need to do that essentially 24/7. You need to make sure that nothing material changes. And this is where the ongoing visibility serves this exact purpose.
That's phenomenal. And then is there reporting available? I mean, what's the importance of stakeholder awareness of how operations and sales and development and R&D and all those departments in any organization, how are they aligned, or how are they in compliance with the GRC program? Like, walk us through kind of like, how do we communicate that with the board or with the partnership that owns it, et cetera?
Yeah, so usually what we see is that this is kind of a bidirectional process. It goes top to bottom and bottom up. It usually starts with the governing board, usually the risk committee again, or the audit committee, that kind of dictates or sets the rules or the guidelines to what the company needs to achieve. That immediately goes down, maybe through the CIO to the CISO or some other, depending, of course, on the organizational structure. But again, the security department will get that as an input. And now they need to do their magic, which is in most cases tedious, ongoing daily job, super important one.
Yep.
This is exactly where we as a vendor in Cypago are helping them with that, to make that daily job a lot more easy and easy to consume, and also easy to share back with the big boys on management, because they need to know what they need to know from the more generic or strategic perspective. They don't need to know exactly what was configured in AWS. They don't really care about it. I'm not sure that they know that we have AWS, but they need to know that they need to know that we have implemented all the controls, all the requirements that have been set in place by external entities, that we are following our own internal policies, and we're tracking that. Now, if something is out of order, that's fine. Nothing bad will happen as long as we can report on that and take the necessary measures.
That's phenomenal. Cypago leverages generative AI and NLP systems. How does it do that? Like, what is the benefit of that? How is that integrated into the platform?
Cyber in general and GRC in specific, and Cyber GRC together, is a type of or a kind of or set of processes that involve tons of data. Think about all the configuration that you can read and you should read from all the different apps that you're using, login data, whatever.
It really boils down to visibility to me. Like, to me, from a very simplistic standpoint, they need to see what the threats are, what the vulnerabilities are, so they can fix them or they can defend against them, right? And it's just visibility. Now, it gets a lot more complicated than that, right? And there's ingestion of logs and events and threat hunting for anomalies, and all this stuff gets really complicated. But at the end of the day, they just need to see what the risk is, right? So they can calculate it. And like you mentioned, make sure it's aligned with our risk appetite at the time.
Exactly that. And we at Cypago, we have adopted a unique approach to this challenge. We are doing our best not to reinvent the wheel. That means that we will connect to whatever tool that you currently have in place as a customer, and we will leverage the data that you already have. You don't need to generate new data for the sake of feeding Cypago. Cypago will do that on its own. It will reuse the data that you already have, whatever you have it on the cloud, in the cloud or on premises. But the nice thing is, and this is where our main value proposition lies, is that we know what to do with the data by implementing these advanced algorithms that you mentioned, NLP, Gen AI, and some other advanced techniques, in order to find or figure out what's actually going on. What is the true status of my overall security program in light of the controls that I chose to implement?
Excellent. That's phenomenal. So let me ask you this, just as we're kind of winding down here, what are some of the bigger threats, the more modern threats that some of your customers are seeing? I mean, I imagine it's still social engineering. The threat itself may be ransomware or exfiltration of data, like for the double ransom. But walk us through what you're hearing are some of the more challenging ones. And I'm curious because I get asked all the time, has AI really made it worse for the threat actors, right? I mean, has it helped the threat actors and made it worse for the defenders? To me, it seems like an arms race, but it doesn't seem like it's done. I think we're just at the beginning still, it seems.
Yeah, who knows what will happen now with Stargate. And like 6 months, 12 months down the road, we'll need to see. But anyhow, as I see it, the number one threat, and probably the oldest one, is us, human beings. We're the number one threat because we are, in most cases, we are the one clicking the button or taking the wrong decision. That didn't truly change in the last, 20, 25 years that I've known cybersecurity. However, we do have new and advanced tools that help us, let's say, reduce the probability of making an error, making a mistake. I think that AI plays a crucial role in that, starting from generating code and reviewing code and making sure that we're now not repeating stupid human mistakes, up to designing systems, designing defense mechanisms, being able to crunch huge amounts of data and find out these outliers, etc. But as in so many other cases in human history, as in the nuclear race, everything can and will be used against you. So it's all kind of a double-sided sword. So yes, AI is a risk in and of itself. Yeah. Not just when an adversary leverages that, but also we organizations using AI. Just think about data. How many times a day an average mid-sized organization is using AI and sharing data without even thinking about the fact that now whatever proprietary data that the company created is now shared with, we don't even know with who.
Right. And we've seen that play out already, right? I mean, we've seen a couple instances where people are putting proprietary code or intellectual property inside an LLM, inside AI to generate, fix bugs or whatever it might be, not even realizing that that's now out in the public, and then that gets used against them. And it's a big challenge. That is a perfect example of where governance needs to step in and have the right policies and, like quarantine that off so that you can create your own environment and then leverage AI internally and not let it get out there. But,
no, absolutely. Last year, sometime mid last year, two relatively new frameworks were introduced, one by NIST and the other one as part of the ISO family of standards. Both were designed to help organizations track and monitor the inherent risk with using AI. Yeah. And this is something that I highly recommend organizations to look into and try to implement as best as they can.
Absolutely. That's absolutely great advice. Well, Arik, thank you so much. And thank you for all that you guys are doing. We will have links to Cypago in the show notes and links to your information as well. Keep up the great work. This is fantastic. So I was looking at the platform. It's super intuitive. It seems really useful for organizations. So absolutely, we'll keep that in mind when we're out talking to clients. And we wish you guys the absolute best. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And I wish us all the best ever 2025.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Well, that wraps this up. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our episode. The next one is coming right up. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast and downloading on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cyber Crime Junkies, and we thank you for watching.